Hello, this podcast is recorded on Gadigal country and we pay our respects to the First Nations custodians of the land, both here and also wherever you're listening from.
Hello everybody, Annabelle Crabb here. My version of this message will be a bit longer than Lee Sales' version of this message. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you want us to give us a hand to keep it going, we'd so appreciate it. You can do that by liking and reviewing our podcast. You can review us or rate us on Spotify. You can go to our podcast website, chat10looks3.com, and click on podcast and then support. And that gives you a bunch of options. You could buy merch. You could come see one of our shows. You could subscribe, which starts at $2 a month and helps us kick this can a little further down the road. Or you could do things that are absolutely for free, like tell a friend, or share our stuff on social media, or just do something nice for somebody in our name. Just my name, really, would do. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for keeping this ridiculous ride going.
Paging Annabelle Crabb.
Oh, hi, just concluding my extensive prep.
She was just scrawling something in a notebook. That's what she's referring to.
I'm always doing that. It's all content, baby. It's just ideas. I just designed a chandelier. No, I didn't. Just trying to think of something complicated that I could have designed, which I didn't at all.
Okay.
So
good start.
Anyway,
good opening.
It's pretty strong, isn't it?
For anyone who's still listening.
And also, the first thing I want to talk about, I forgot to bring the book in to hold it up, which is actually really stupid.
Oh, well, it's mostly an audio medium.
Yeah,
mostly.
Except for the exploding popularity of podcasts on YouTube. Anyway.
I feel hot. I need to take my...
Okay, it's a strip shot. Here's the content, baby. All right. Yeah.
For the people who need a visual.
Lisa has just taken off a cream woolen jumper and is now wearing an unironed T-shirt through which I'm pretty sure I can glimpse the outline of a very daggy sports bra.
How dare you?
Okay. I challenge you to contradict me. Well, we're starting in Paris in the 1870s. Was that invented by them? I don't know anything about France. Anyway.
No, I don't know when the can. Oh, no, the can's old, Offenbach. So that's like well before 1870.
Perfect.
Just a little bit of googling.
Oh, hardly.
Excusez-moi. But like googler le can. Okay, yeah.
Imagine pitching the can to a producer. So we're just going to stand up in a row and then we're just going to...
Offenbach, the can. Oh, actually it was the 1840s.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
so can was sort of like... had already had one thing and everybody's parents still thought it was cool, but the young folk were, rolling their eyes at the can, I imagine. That's what I diagnostically expect the can to be doing 30 years after its inception. Be like the nut bush where your piss parents do it, at a party and you're like, oh, sorry, we are those people, aren't we? Sorry. Better example.
It's terrible. So the can, okay. Oh, so, all right. So... Okay.
It's amazing to watch your process.
Offenbach was it looks like it was 1858, much later than I thought. 10 out of 10 for Offenbach.
Actually. I mean,
what's that?
10 out of 10 for me.
Oh, 10 out of 10 for Offenbach. Okay,
I'm just all legs and beavers.
So there was some chick called Marguerite Bedell who overcame her plainness by the fervour of her dancing.
Dance 10 looks 3.
As one writer reported, crowds gathered round to watch that whirling mass of limbs and lingerie.
Wow.
Okay, great.
That's actually very on brand, isn't it?
Her great rival was Finette, whose time in the Paris Opera's Corps de Ballet gave her a technical edge as a dancer. Her high kicks were legendary. She won 1,500 francs at an opera ball when she kicked a gentleman's hat off his head.
Finette.
There you go. My work here is done.
French names
I don't even know
good,
what I was reading that information off. It could be completely made up and absolutely unreliable.
Faux French bullshit site. Now,
yes,
there's a point to this.
Yeah, where are we going?
We're about to talk about a book called Paris in Ruins.
Yes.
Which is about the siege of Paris, 1871, 1872.
Yes.
And the birth of Impressionism. And it's written by a gentleman known to both of us, Sebastian Smee. He's been working. He's the art critic at the Washington Post. Has been writing this book for about 5 years. I've heard the occasional whinge from him where he's like, it's not good and terrible. Just like really whining in the way that a writer whines when they're really stuck. And yeah, I'm like, dude, come on. Like, just finish it. Anyway, he's hatched out it's a great little egg to have been hatching for a number of years.
Okay, so sometimes these things look accidental, and I'm sure this is accidental, but I also think people who are really good writers and kind of plugged into interesting moments, often things land at the same time. So bizarrely, when I was just in Paris when we were doing our show in London, I went to an exhibition at the Musée d'Orsay, which was about this era in French art, the birth of Impressionism, and what happened in the kind of salon post, Paris was in the slumps because they've lost this war and they feel really down on themselves, and then it kind of goes from there. And so they have, I presume, all of the art that Sebastian's writing about in this book is on display. And I think that exhibition is now about to travel to the US. So Smee has written this book about...
He's picked it like a nose.
He's picked it like a nose. He's absolutely picked it like a nose.
Well, I don't really know exactly what his decision-making process was, or whether it was accidental or whether it was deliberate. I don't know. And I will ask him, because I'm doing an event with him at the Art Gallery of New South Wales on November the 9th for the Sydney Writers' Festival. He's coming out here. So I will be putting this and other questions to the writer himself.
Excellent.
Do come along if you're in Sydney on November the 9th. It's at like 3 p.m, I think.
Hold the Smee thoughts while we're pimping stuff. Chat 10 Melbourne show, 1st of November at Hamer Hall. Chat 10 Canberra show, 6th of December at ANU. Check our website for details. Please come along. They're going to be a scream. Carry on. Paris in ruins.
It's like you've done television. Look at that.
So efficient.
Yeah. Now throw the weather. No, don't. So what he's ended up doing, and like obviously Sebastian is a very well-known writer about visual art.
Pulitzer Prize winner for it.
Exactly. Oh, God. Yes, Pulitzer Prize. Yes, very good. Well done. Annoying. And worked here in Australia as an art critic for the Australian, Sydney Morning Herald, but then has since worked in the US where, yes, he did win a Pulitzer, very deservedly. Terrific writer about visual art. But his this book is, yes, it's about the establishment of the Impressionist movement, but he's been super specific and zeroed in on this essentially, over 2 calendar years, what was happening in the city of Paris, and kind of tied it in to the lives of these Impressionist painters, most specifically Edouard Manet, who's kind of like a bit known as father of Impressionism, and one of the only women that was associated, certainly the best-known woman associated with the Impressionist movement in the early years, Berthe Morisot, who's a very kind of like amazing artist, but nowhere near as famous as you can imagine as Manet. Anyway, he's got a theory, Seb has in this book, which is kind of compelling, which is that the two of them had this kind of relationship of intimacy, like they were married both to other people, but he kind of charts that relationship and the paintings that they painted of each other and with each other in them and so on. And somehow that story and the story of the Siege of Paris, which came about when, oh my God, it was a very tough time to be French because they were ruled at the time by Napoleon III. And I mean, 3 is too many Napoleons, I've always thought. And this guy was a real idiot and picked a fight with the Prussians, who were sort of riding high a bit. And they just went, oh, screw you, we'll encircle and besiege your entire city. And that happened for a long, long, long time. You couldn't get in and out. And a bunch of artists had fled, but Manet hadn't. He stayed there and fought, so he didn't do much painting for a little while. And Morisot, was sort of in Paris as well, where her sister, she was very close to, had departed Paris previously. And you could not get in and out. So, I mean, people starved. They ate the zoo animals. And you couldn't, it was before texting and phones. So they had all these kind of great minds at work on how to get messages in and out of Paris. And so one technique was they designed balloons to kind of lift them up above the range of the Prussian rifles and just sort of madly float off and make landfall and, carrying letters and, intelligence and whatever. And they also trained pigeons and photographed letters and then rolled up microfilm and inserted them into the quills of tail feathers and sort of secured those, I hope, in a humane way to the pigeons.
Man.
Very, very detailed. But, and then, of course, once the siege was over, didn't end well, then there was like a civil war in Paris as well. So it's interesting that this kind of account of the art of Impressionism, which is all about kind of looking at things in a different way, trying to paint light, trying to like moving away from the sort of complete realism that was the thing at the time. This emerging group of painters are like, well, what if we didn't like always finish the canvases off completely carefully? What if we were trying to achieve a sense of what light looks like,
Yeah.
And then obviously they encountered a lot of resistance from the establishment, and then you had this sort of war on top. So the book kind of is a war story, but also a love story, but also an art story, and also a story about Paris. And there's something weirdly, even though he doesn't normally write about wars or France or whatever, there's something about all the relationships that makes it an incredibly gripping read, even in the accounts of the battles, which I always flick through battle scenes, but like it's actually a really incredible piece of writing. When I've read it, I actually finished it in less than a day, because I started it and I thought, with that sort of feeling you get sometimes when you start a book that a friend of yours has written, and you're kind of like, let's hope this isn't as much of a piece of shit as he wrote.
I know, and then the terrible feeling is because you know that the friend's probably waiting for you to get back, and so if you don't get to something,
I was back within a day.
Quickly,
there's no way that and I don't normally do that. I just sort of started it, and then I went, oh, this is really interesting.
I'll often with a friend say, I'm just letting you know I've started your book, but if you don't hear from me, don't read anything into that, because I just might be slow reading it. So if you haven't heard back, don't kind of stress.
That's very, very, very important to do.
Yeah. I am dying to read that, just because I really like reading his art criticism, because he's one of those critics who makes stuff accessible and talks about things in a way that you don't feel like it's a big wank.
Yeah.
And I really like people who can talk about art and music and stuff like that.
Sometimes I think one of the most important things in journalism, like no matter what you're covering, is, and all journalists, I guess, are sort of professional, intelligent ignoramuses, right? Like your job is to walk into something that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, make yourself an expert, and then while you're writing, try to remember what it was like to know nothing at all. That's the kind of the most mind-bending thing. It's like, how do I write from a position of deep knowledge, but make sure that I can write for people who don't know as much as I do, and also not to sound like a total tosspot while you're doing it. Like it's quite hard to do. But yeah, you're right. Sebastian is very good at it. But also I think there's a tonal consistency to the whole book, even when the same observational skills and descriptive skills. Because it's weird to write a book about visual art where you're like, I'm writing about a visual medium using words.
Well, and also totally, but also to be tonally consistent when you've got to write war scenes, but then art stuff, like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is a very impressive book. So, and it's only been out for a week or two, and it's been, very well reviewed around the place, which is good.
I'm looking forward to reading it. One of the things too I was going to say about journalism, when you say what the core skill is, I think another thing that journalists should do is bring context about, hey, remember this happened before or whatever. And one of the things that struck me recently in the Trump-Harris debate wash up, and I've been thinking about it just because I'm working on a piece to write for next week about American politics. Pretty universally, everyone judged, well, Harris wiped the floor with Trump. She decisively won that debate. And it was best, I thought, typified by Katty Kay and The Mooch and their podcast that we like, The Rest is Politics US, where Katty Kay said, well, if you were hiring a CEO, there's just absolutely no doubt you'd go for Kamala Harris. But I mean, I was just listening and reading all this analysis going, God, does anyone remember 2016? If we were hiring for a CEO, we would have got Hillary Clinton. If we were hiring for CEO, Al Gore would have beaten George W. Bush. If we were hiring for a CEO, if that was the quality people look for in politics, Rory Stewart would have beaten Boris Johnson for the Conservative Party leadership. Like, people, when they're making political decisions, don't apply the same prism that they apply for who they want to hire as an employee. It's a different thing because politics is so heavily tied to your values and your beliefs. That's an emotional decision. It's not like an intellectual decision.
Well, I mean, sometimes you give your vote to somebody who you think can articulate something that you don't see getting a run in politics as you know it. And I think that 2016 campaign was a lot about, what was viewed as the establishment of the Washington establishment, right? Like,
yeah.
When you've got a bunch of people running for president who are the son of someone who is the president or the wife of someone who is the president, so you're sort of going like, okay, so
yeah,
how broadly are we casting this net here?
Yeah.
So there's that. But also, the other thing that I think is worth remembering is that television is incredibly powerful, and this guy has been on TV being a CEO for 10 seasons or whatever. So, he doesn't have to do any work at all introducing himself as a CEO because he's been on like a top rating TV show doing that job. So, I mean, I'm sure that is a little bit to do with it as well, because sometimes I think America does struggle a little bit with like, is that real or is that television?
It's going to be fascinating to see what happens there. I mean, it's very difficult, I think, when you're sitting in Australia or if you're sitting in Washington, D.C. to gauge how people who are in Ohio, Pennsylvania, whatever, are thinking about it all. But anyway, I'm kind of fascinated by it. Back to actually non-political, non-news kind of content. So a couple of things that I've consumed that I've enjoyed. One was I've only watched one episode of it. It's a doco called In the Arena, Serena Williams.
Oh, okay. Do you think that was a deliberate Serena Arena
Could be.
thing?
Could be. It's...
I just had a text from my friend in New York this morning who said she just finished watching it and she was in tears.
Okay. Well,
Did you cry?
I'm only one
you're a
episode.
monster, so
I'm
you
only
probably
one
didn't.
episode in.
Oh, okay.
So, look, I'm not sure that I've got the appetite to watch 8 episodes of it, is my only thing. So I find the story of their childhood really amazing, and their father, who basically kind of taught himself tennis to coach the daughters, and the fact that, the sisters were both very competitive but also super close. And
So did he teach himself tennis because they were already really good at tennis, or did he teach himself tennis because he wanted them to be good at tennis?
Wanted them to be, because he saw how much money you could make.
Okay.
So yeah, it was really interesting. But he didn't seem certainly not in this doco. I've never watched the film. I don't know anything about Mr. Williams, but they seemed like a very loving family. Didn't seem like it was abusive. Serena Williams alludes to sometimes it was difficult because the line between coach and parent was a blurred and problematic one. So she kind of alludes to that. But
Could you imagine being coached by either of our fathers?
My father tried to teach me how to drive, and that was plenty of coaching. Anyway, it's really interesting. But I think the thing maybe that's making me not certain about watching on is I just don't know if I'm Serena Williams seems like a really sensible, nice. No, I do, as you know, love a sports doco. She seems like a really nice, sensible person who's clearly very talented, very disciplined. But actually, what's more watchable is someone like Michael Jordan, who's like kind of flawed, because you're like, wow, you are a difficult, complicated, or even David Beckham in the Beckham doco, where you like...
You only like that because of his folded jumpers.
Yeah, but he's such a strange and unusual person, whereas in the bits I've seen so far, Serena's kind of talking about, this happened and I won this game, and here's what I was thinking when I was playing Martina Hingis, and here's what I was thinking when I was up against Monica Seles, and da-da-da-da. I like tennis, and it's kind of holding my attention.
But you're waiting for her to do something irrational.
Yeah, I'm wanting a bit of kind of meatier sort of character or something. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of, I probably will watch on, but I'm not like I was with The Last Dance, where I was like, oh, just gimme. These people are absolutely amazing. And also, I guess the beauty of something like The Last Dance is And I guess a little bit with Beckham too. You got a cast of interesting characters, especially with the basketball one, because they were all like just very larger than life people.
Tennis is sort of a lonely game, isn't it? I mean, you're in your own head.
It is. That's right. Yeah. So that's harder because you don't have a team of people to kind of bounce off. And other tennis docos that I've watched that I've enjoyed, like I remember talking to you about the McEnroe Bjorn Borg one. Well, then it's not a team, but you've got some dynamic personalities playing off each other, so it kind of works in a narrative way. Anyway, I'll press on. I shall report back. But
okay,
I'm
and
enjoying
I'll find
it.
out from my friend Jo, who smashed through it and was very moved.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe she'll say, "Oh yeah, episode 1 was the weakest. Keep it, press on." But let me know what she says.
What? I might just recruit her to be your viewing coach. Like, don't give up. Don't give up. You give it 110% out there. Come on, you run out there. Don't you give up. I reckon she'd be good at that. Yeah.
Good.
Good then. I have been watching with Jeremy such a great series. It's on Disney Plus. It's called The English Teacher.
Yeah.
It's set in an American high school, and it's
drama or reality or
it's drama comedy.
Right.
So, The English Teacher of the title is. He's just been in disciplinary trouble because he slept with another teacher. And the other teacher has left, but there's still a kind of like, there's a bit of a black mark against his name, right?
Right.
So he's paranoid. He's paranoid about anything to do with being gay or dating, like because the school is a bit weird about him being gay and he's screwed this other teacher or whatever. He's also sort of messily still dating the ex-teacher who shows up at his house every now and again. They're not boyfriends anymore.
Right.
So
anyone famous?
He's just. I think there's heaps of. I think there's like I definitely recognise it, but I forgot to write down the names. So
allow me to once again
it's Stephen Thingo, who was in
the search engine known as Google.
It's called The English Teacher.
While you talk about it, I'll look it up.
God, it's so funny because it's just about high school politics between the teachers. He's in like Texas or Arizona or something, and he's kind of like this big gay English teacher who's just kind of like nervous in the education system of a red state, basically.
So I've just had a heart attack because I've Googled the English teacher cast and these things come up and the actors are so famous that my jaw was on the floor to think, no, it's not.
I think there's a movie of the same name.
There is,
older.
exactly. I've gone, because what's come up is Julianne Moore, Greg Kinnear, Nathan Lane, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me that Annabelle Crabb could not recognise Julianne Moore or Nathan Lane?
Look, on some days I reckon I probably wouldn't.
But the TV show is a different thing. Brian Jordan Alvarez is the creator, and he also stars as Evan Marquez. And then, actually, nobody looks famous.
There you go.
On
See,
the list.
I'm not that foolish, but God, it's funny. It's one of those ones that's dropping every week, and I think Jeremy just found it. And
okay, great.
And it's just,
would the kids watch it?
Yeah, they could. Yeah, I think you'd find it funnier though. Like it's just the comedy has grown up. And it's also about teachers dealing with high school students in this era, and like, yeah, it's
okay. That sounds good.
It's sort of awkward and hilarious, and I'm just absolutely loving it. And I'm watching it the second a new one drops. Speaking
of what I'm watching with the kids, and it's very popular on Netflix at the moment, The Rookie. Have you watched any of that?
No.
Okay, look, it depends probably if you want to watch it with the kids, probably depends on what your appetite is for violence with kids because there's lots of bang, bang, bang police, LAPD. Right. So it's a procedural, it's set in the LAPD. It's exactly the kind of show at the moment that my kids go for, which is it's the same characters. There's never character development and they just dropped into a different situation every week. So Young Sheldon, which they were watching, Kim's Convenience, or they just that's the kind of age
Kim's
bracket they're in.
So good.
I love Kim's Convenience. So they, it's LAPD. The main guy, Officer Nolan, is the oldest rookie in the history of the LAPD. So he's coming in, and so it's him and a couple of other rookies who are mates, and they're getting schooled by the older cops, and it's just goes from there. It's constantly in the top shows on Netflix. I find it inoffensive, but I'm not going, kids, come on, let's squeeze in another episode of The Rookie, but it's fine.
It's funny, once your children get a bit older, and my youngest is 11, nearly 12, I mean, she's definitely allowed to watch stuff that my eldest kid was not allowed to watch at the age of 11. Like I'm definitely becoming you know.
I do something as a parent that I used to be incandescent with rage that when my mother did it, which was I let the small kid do pretty much everything at the same time as the big kid. And when I was the big kid, I used to be furious that my younger brother got to do everything because I'd be like, well, hang on, you didn't let me get the train into the city till I was 15, but you're letting him when he's 14. So,
absolutely. And my eldest, who's just this week finishing year 12, is a bit like, she's getting a lunch order again. When I was in primary school, like when we first started them, I used my own mother's rules. Like, so we're like, lunch order is a once a term event. And now it's just like, oh my God.
I've never
technology's better.
I've never done a lunch order because I'm too lazy to learn what the system is for how to do it. I don't know how to do it. So they get a packed lunch every day.
Listen, I would rephrase that and own it as a virtue. All my children have never had a lunch order because I'm such an incredible parent. You just got to reframe, baby. Right. Because that is a passive-aggressive mum boast if you handle it correctly.
See, I'm not in any of the mum
and then try
group.
And say something like, I so admire that you're happy to just order your kid a lunch. I couldn't do that. I'm amazed and I'm so impressed that you can.
Are you in any of the parenting WhatsApp groups?
Oh yeah, mate. I'm in the parenting WhatsApps for old schools that my kids don't go to anymore.
Oh God.
I love it.
See, I did the whole, I can't possibly have everyone having my mobile number. So children's father, you'll have to do it. Oh, so I'm not in any parenting. Fantastic. So I don't know any of the competitive mumming stuff.
Oh, it's more of a mixed bag these days. Like there's more blokes on the on the parenting chat than there have been, but it's a rich anthropological survey of our times. And one of the good things about it is you quickly identify the parents that you're like, oh, you're funny, I like you.
Oh, right.
Everybody's very helpful, and also if you're a bit details hampered me, it's very good because you can go, oh, Christ, when is that thing? There's always a well-meaning, beautiful person who has photographed the exam timetable for year 7 and just posted it, and there you go.
I actually
thank you to those people everywhere, including the ones that set up the WhatsApp chats, because I never would.
I actually need one step up from that, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, that I need just the reminder on the day or the night before. I want someone who can go kind of a parenting PA, where they can just go, just reminding everyone tomorrow's mufti day with an orange shirt or whatever.
But that's Gwen, isn't it?
Well, but my kids are going to the same school.
That's so that can be a real snag, yeah.
Yeah, so I need someone to do that, to just go, hey, just checking, they have to take their oboe tomorrow or whatever they have to do.
Every child has to take an oboe. It's oboe day.
It sounds like the kind of bullshit they pull that I see at 10 p.m. at night, and then I'm like, where am I supposed to source 2 oboes?
I know, and also orange shirts for Harmony Day. Oh my God. I think it's the most disharmonious day of my entire calendar year, Harmony Day. I had to find an orange shirt the other day because, now that I'm sporty, I went to see
sporty?
Well, now, okay, there's a story here. I went to see the GWS Giants play at Henson Park, and they're orange. So I'm like, great, I'll wear something orange. And then I couldn't find a single orange thing. Not even Harmony Day. In the end, I wore this Wilco T-shirt that's sort of a bit, I'd call it persimmon maybe, generously.
It had a few cheese stains on it or something, so it kind of
cheese stains. Anyway, but the reason I went is that sometime last year I ran into what's a collective noun for, AFL women's players from the GWS Giants?
A team?
Yeah, okay. I was looking for a more, Anyway, I was on a plane, and it was one of those plane rides where I'm sitting right next to the dunny, so I meet everybody on the plane. And bless them, I don't know, a couple of the Giants players are like, oh, it's Annabelle Crabb from the ABC. Good on them. So they came back. Anyway, they said, oh, you got to come to when we play at Henson Park. I'm like, yeah, that's really near my house. Let's go. And last week they sent me a video, a couple of the players, they did this video addressed to you and me saying, listen, we've heard from the podcast that you're into sport because Sales watched The Last Dance. And so come and watch us play sport. We're not just meatheads. And then there's they're all reading books and watching 7:30 interviews. Anyway, it's a very funny video, which will do a link to it. I'll put it up on my Instagram anyway. And it was just
fun?
the best fun day.
Oh,
God, it was
cool.
so cool.
Oh,
and
great.
it just made me think, like it's not that many years since everyone was like, well, people don't like to watch women's sport, do they? I mean, hands are tied. People just aren't into it. And then somehow post Matildas, everyone's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Ow.
Anyway, Hands and Paths were my favourite grounds, but it was just like the best day. Just so much fun. Even if you're not that into footy, it's just great atmosphere, and it was cool. So
While you
ladies.
were doing that,
and you were offending your mother,
probably just sitting at home reading a book or something. No, I have been watching another show actually that I'm not 100% sure about. It's called Wise Guy.
Oh yeah,
it's
this is something to do with Sopranos. Right?
It's a documentary about David Chase, who created and directed The Sopranos, and his life, his process, and then the making of the show. Okay. Now, I'm, as you know, and as well established, I am a gigantic fan of The Sopranos, probably my all-time favourite television show.
You disguise it well, but I can see through.
It's still, when I hear the theme music, it still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I love it. Anyway, I'm not sure about this doco. And the first thing that also made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and not in a good way, was that the filmmaker has set it up to interview David Chase in an exact replica of the office in which Tony sees Dr. Melfi.
No, that's not right.
That's not right. Why didn't someone stop that?
Wow, why would you do that?
Why didn't someone go, mate, trying too hard, don't do that? So David Chase actually, in the first maybe 20 minutes of the doco, they break in the interview and he's just like, yeah, I see what you're doing here, but he's clearly not loving it either.
Oh, well, they've kept that in though. That recovers them a bit that they've left that in. It does,
but I find it a really conceited way of doing it. David Chase is... He also openly says he doesn't like talking about himself. He doesn't like self-reflection. That's always a problem when you're making a doco about someone if they don't. You need someone who wants to just bang on about themselves endlessly.
Yeah, so he's the actual sole subject of this thing?
No, they then go and they include, interviews with actors. I mean, for me, because I'm a fan of the show, I'm loving watching stuff like when they have the audition tapes of people and they show different people reading the Tony Soprano role or different actors reading for different roles. And then they show, it's really interesting because a couple of them when they come in, have you watched The Sopranos?
Yeah, I've watched all of it, yeah.
Okay, so Christopher, who I think was superb, Michael Imperioli, they show some other younger actors reading for that part. And when Michael Imperioli comes in, I mean, it's really hard because obviously we associate him so much with that role. It's hard to bringing a lot of knowledge to it. But he really stands out. And the other person who stands out really a lot is Drea De Matteo, who plays his girlfriend Adriana.
Oh, okay.
And she comes in and she's kind of slightly a different physical type. She thought she wasn't going to get the role because she thought they would cast someone who looked more kind of classical Italian, dark hair, dark features. She has a big blonde perm.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
The big acrylic nails and the whole thing. But she just lands it so beautifully. She's just got this perfect Christopher kind of vibe, and she's awesome. And then, of course, they struggled just gigantically to find James Gandolfini, and then they kind of land him, and he comes in. And again, when you see him up against the other actors reading it, you're like, oh, yeah.
Oh, so you get sort of a bit of audition. Yeah. That's a bit awkward, isn't it? I mean, how do the other actors who didn't get the roles feel about that?
I assume they must sign a release or something. But anyway, it's...
in the event that this series becomes incredibly historically successful without you, we reserve the right to humiliate you in front of your mother.
The other thing that David Chase talks about, which anyone who watches The Sopranos knows this, is that the character of Tony's mother is very heavily based on his own mother. And so they talk a bit about his childhood and his actual mother. She obviously would be dead now. You wouldn't have been able to speak of her the way that they speak of her in this if she was still alive, I would assume. Yeah, anyway, it's kind of, I've watched one episode of it. I will watch the second because I'm such a diehard Sopranos person, but... Oh, man, that really put me off, that interview setting. It really put me off.
Okay, that's amazing that you're watching episode 2 not because you're getting a lot out of it, but because of loyalty to a dead format.
to the brand.
Okay,
yeah.
wow.
And I don't want to miss any information about the Sopranos that I might like to know, and so I'm going to press on.
You're not as far as like hate watching it, but you're.
I'm definitely not hate watching it, but I'm kind of like, oh, you're making me feel disappointed, but I'm still watching.
Okay, so have you watched? I'm interested to hear whether you've jumped into a show that's like number one on Netflix at the moment, or very, very popular, and it's the kind of dramatized series about the Menendez brothers.
I have not, but I'm very interested to hear about this.
Okay, so
can you remind me who they are again? I know they were a big news story.
Like they were the two sons of a wealthy couple. The parents are found dead in their big mansion. There's this idea that the mafia did it, and then it becomes clear that the brothers actually killed their parents.
Right.
And then their defense was that their father had been abusive, a suggestion that he was sexually abusive to them. And all of that, I gather, is sort of canvassed in this dramatized program. It's made by Ryan Murphy, who made that Jeffrey Dahmer series. He's done a million things.
Right.
Ryan Murphy's a very, very, very famous director. But the last couple of things, like the Dahmer one, he made Feud, at least the very first Feud about.
I love that.
Right?
The Betty Davis, Susan Sarandon one.
Yeah.
Right.
Like he's made lots of things that you would have watched. But it's interesting, like the Jeffrey Dahmer one, which is, obviously about one of the most horrifying serial killers in American history, was controversial. There was a lot of protest from the families of Dahmer's victims, saying that the series kind of not glamorized Dahmer, but they weren't happy with the way their, dead friends and relatives had been depicted. And this particular series, and he makes shows that are quite glamorous, like there's high production values, there's handsome people, it's the lives of the rich and famous a lot of the time. And this series opens with the two Menendez brothers in a limousine, and they're kind of talking, one of them is getting really like antsy because he's feeling terribly guilty about what they've done. The other one is saying, hey, you just got to like think of what we're going to achieve. We're going to make them very proud of us, And it turns out that they're on their way to court. So in this one, the Menendez brothers, who are still in prison, have protested about their depiction.
Right.
Now, I started with the opening scenes because I started watching it last night and I promptly fell asleep. So I've seen about 20 minutes of it.
Oh, okay. Was it, notwithstanding falling asleep, was it holding your interest?
Sure.
Okay, right.
Hard to tell over 20 minutes.
Look, for people of our age, I don't think falling asleep is a sign of lack of interest in the product. In
my defense, I was in bed. Like I was watching it in bed. And I was just like, goodbye, Menendez Brothers. I'm off. Because if you get a chance to go to sleep, you take it, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, 100% too.
But I'm kind of like, one of the other reasons that I started watching it is that the mum is played by Chloe Sevigny, and I will watch
you love her,
anything with her in it. So anyway,
we've got to get out of here. But can I just before we do one last thing? Just because I know chatters love her, Gina Chick, her book "We Are the Stars," her memoir is out, which I read, and it's really
you're a big fan too.
I love Gina. Yeah, if you like Gina, you will really love it. It kind of fleshes out more of her story and her childhood. It really just a very,
remarkable
very
person,
interesting person. Yeah, really interesting human being.
Did you find it an inspirational read?
I hate the word. I don't hate the word inspirational, but I do find her, the word probably that I'd think of more than inspirational is admirable. I don't know what it is about the word inspirational that I don't like. Maybe because I associate it with greeting cards or, that kind of.
I'll try to be more original in my phrasing of questions in future.
No, but like it's kind of like, I don't know, it makes me think of candles.
Jesus,
so I would say
like,
admirable. I find her admirable. I think she's quite extraordinary and very compelling, and it's a really interesting book. So if you're a fan of Gina, I do recommend reading it. You'll really like it.
Plenty of fans of Gina out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure they'll be flocking
There's
to it.
There's a lady who knows how to do it tough.
She has a lot of wisdom.
She wouldn't whine about book week costumes, would she?
No, she probably
She'd
wouldn't.
catch and skin a P&C parent.
100% she would be able to make a Book Week costume. I have got no doubt. She'd be able to make a scuba diving outfit.
Oh, you're ridiculous. All right.
All right, let's go.
Go forth and conquer.
Let's go.